Yes, you have your notebook open, but we'll see. By the way, I have a whole bunch of books. If anybody's interested in Civil War books, I have some cool ones. A friend of mine died, and he had a big, giant library of Civil War books, and I got a bunch of them. So. All right, ready? So, your end game. Are we on?
Yeah.
What's today? It's a Happy New Year. It's January 4th, 2017, and we're talking about the Civil War, and we're giving an overview of kind of like how you have to understand the causes of the Civil War. And that's the goal for today, is to get us to see you're going to have to explain and answer these questions. Start with number 2. Let's look at number 2. Explain why the southern states seceded from the Union beginning in 1860. Use details from the error to explain your thesis. So you have to explain, why did the southern states leave the Union, and you have to incorporate a bunch of these details to help your explanation. And so today I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you the big picture, and then we're going to go through the detail to help you. All right? So that's our end game. So what's the end game? Explain why the South leaves the Union. Okay, good. And the way I want to help you understand it is I'm going to point out a few basic things. Everyone remember what the word antebellum means? Anyone not know? Ask question. Ante means before, bellum means the war. So whenever you say antebellum period, is usually before the Civil War, okay? So Northwest Ordinance, 3/5 Compromise, 20-year moratorium, fugitive slave clause. These three are constitutional compromises. Clear? They're all about slavery. Clear? Northwest Ordinance is Articles of Confederation, but it deals with slavery. Remember, no slavery north of the Ohio River. Remember? Okay, so the significance of these three pieces are that at the founding of our country, we compromised with slavery. The government established slavery legally. Okay? That's pretty clear. Slavery was a fundamental part of our country, in our Constitution, and even before the Constitution. Government recognized it. Clear? You got that? And then we got the Missouri Compromise, and then you have the Compromise of 1850. Now, those are later in the 19th century, 1820 and 1850, that said, yeah, compromise. The Americans in our political system are compromising and allowing slavery. Clear? And that's where I want to take us. A watershed, a really big change in the relationship of slavery to the Union and attitudes about slavery in the Union is 1850. And that's kind of the starting point for what we're trying to understand. The easy way to do it, in my view, is kind of a timeline. And I'm going to do a couple of basic things. So, start the timeline 1850, and you want to end it, well, this is 1860, this is November 1860, this is 1861, this is April 1861 is Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter is the start of the Civil War. November is Lincoln is elected. Between November and April, you have what we call the secession crisis. Okay? 1860 is the election year. So, in order to understand the Civil War, or at least the causes, go ahead, what's the question?
What was that crisis called?
secession crisis. Remember seceding from the Union? Now, in order to answer the question, why did the southern states leave the Union, you have to know what goes on in the 1850s. And what you're going to see is, and that's what all these list of details here, all of this is in the 1850s. So the secession crisis, the election of 1860, John Brown's raid, Lincoln-Douglas debates, Dred Scott decision, the Republican Party, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Fugitive Slave Act, Compromise of 1850, and even the Wilmot Proviso. All of these are events. Boom, 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 boom. All of these events are going to impact the American political scene, or the American political, social, economic scene. You with us?
Yeah.
Okay. And so in order to understand why they decide to leave the Union here, you got to understand how all this fits in along the way. You got that so far? So you're going to, in order to understand this fully, you got to understand the decade of the 1850s. We call it the coming of the Civil War because of what happens in the 1850s. So that's part one. You got it? Mm-hmm. All right, look at this now. This is even better. Okay. Part two. Part two. Now, here's how you want to think about it. Oops. Oh, damn it.
Undo.
Command Z.
You would undo them.
How do you do that?
There
Control
should be a
Z.
backwards privilege.
A what?
Control Z.
Uh-oh.
Control Z.
Control Z. Now, don't work on this.
Yeah, just press it a few more times.
You want to bet?
Yeah.
I'll bet your grade on it.
Okay.
I'll bet you 100 points.
Control.
Who's taking it? Daniel?
No.
Control Z.
No.
Control Z.
No.
Control Z. You lose 100 points.
Oh boy.
Wait, that makes me good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Isn't it fun?
Okay. Do you want me to redraw the timeline?
No, we're fine. It's fine. It's good. We have
Here, hang on.
Okay. So this is how you're going to understand it easily. Ready? What we have in the United States at this time, in 1850s, is what we call the polarization of the American political, economic, social system. Political, economic, and social. And the main issue is slavery. Okay? People, let's see, so you have the radicals, right? You know what radicals are? These people don't compromise. They're only one way. It's like fundamentalist beliefs, okay? So on one side you have the abolitionist movement. That's a small population. By the way, this is north and this is south. So it's sectional. Okay, this is what's going on in the sections of the country. You have on this side, you have the pro-slavery. We call them the fire eaters, that they want Southern rights and Southern slavery and whatever the South wants. They want that power. Okay? We call them fire eaters, the hardcore secessionists. And then you have the rest of the people are in the center like that. All right, can you see that? These guys are moderates, generally, with moderates. They're moderates. They want to maintain the Union. They want to maintain their status. They don't want to hassle and fight. They're moderate. Like, okay, whatever. And what you're going to see is, as the decade of the 1850s, and that's where you go back to your timeline, as your decade moves forward or progresses to 1860 and then the election, you have people moving to the polls, to the opposite sides. The people in the South are moving towards the pro-slavery secession, and the people in the North are moving towards the abolition movement. And in 1860, you've got a whole bunch of people in the North are way over here, and most people in the South are way over here. Radical and radical. And they stop compromising, they stop talking, they just say, I cannot live in a country with these people. We need to leave. That's the Southern view. The way you want to pay attention to this. Now I want you to we're going to divide up the class. This part of the class is clearly smaller population, right? This part is larger population, right? Okay, so you guys are the North, you are the South. This line right here, what is this line called? The Mason-Dixon line, dividing the North and the South. Okay, so the Southern view is going to be pretty easy. There's a few moderates. There's not a ton, but there's a few moderates that don't want to get in a fight. They just want to do their business and keep this system the way they want it, right? Okay. But their view is going to be pretty easy. It's going to be the pro-slavery view. So, for example, with the Wilmot Proviso, they're going to be pretty united in how they view that. They're going to say, no, you can't separate us from the benefits of new territory. Remember? Mexico will poison us. That was the one, remember? You cannot separate us. That's a dominant view here. So the South is easy to see their perspective, and you really have to do that to understand all this. So for all of the details, all of the events that occur here, you want to say, how does the North see it? How does the South see it? You got to look at it from their different perspectives to really understand it. Okay? So think about that. So the South is pretty basic. They want the expansion of slavery. They want slavery protected in the Constitution. And that's what their goal is. They don't want to be abused because the North has more population and more power, essentially. Okay? So they're hypersensitive to those things. The North is a little different, and let's look at that for a minute. The North has three different groups. A small population of abolitionists. That's one. So if this was the North, you guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people would be abolitionists. They're a minority, they're fundamentalists, and people don't like them. No offense. Okay? The Northerners don't like the abolitionists. The Southerners hate the abolitionists. Northerners really don't like them because they're fundamentalists. They're crazy religious zealots. You know what that is?
Yeah.
Someone who's like overly, religious and spouts their religion and tries to transform you because you don't believe in their attitudes. The easiest way to identify it is, in our modern context, is the anti-abortion people. They are the equivalent to the abolitionists and the way people saw them. So think about this. Remember the people who are anti-abortion who bring the big signs of the fetuses and whatever. They're groups that are really fundamentalists. No compromise on abortion, period. It's never, ever okay, right? And they are activists, right? Do people like those people? I mean, no. People think they're crazy and that they are disruptive, and I don't know, that's my sense about how people say it. Well, my point is, that's the way the Northerners saw the abolitionists. Those guys are crazy, they're causing problems, they're problematic. Okay? You follow so far? Hello? You mean amen here?
Amen.
Okay, good. So, the abolitionist view of the Wilmot Proviso is it doesn't go far enough. Yeah, close expansion of slavery, but also let's end slavery immediately because there is no compromise with the devil. That's their mentality. Are you clear now? So that's one perspective, a minority perspective. And then you got this other group here, the second group, or the B group. These guys are no expansion of slavery. They're moderates. They're here. Hey, slavery's problematic, we know. But it's the Constitution. One second. It's the Constitution. It's legal. We think it's going to die eventually. It's going to die out. So let's help it die by not expanding it. Moderate view. Not in love with slavery, but not an abolitionist. Do you see? Lincoln is that group. Don't expand slavery, it will die eventually. Lincoln. Significant population of the North. And then you got the guys here who are the ABC group in the North. These guys don't care. Don't care. Northern Democrats, Northern Whigs, pro-business, pro-railroad. We don't care. We don't want to deal with slavery. They're not affected by slavery. They don't see slavery. They don't deal with slavery. They don't care about slavery. Get it? Big population of the North. Okay? Democrats and Whigs in the North. Now, what the big issue is, you have to be able to identify, if you can, how does the moderates, Lincoln moderates, no expansion, see the Wilmot Proviso? How do the don't care people see the Wilmot Proviso? Get it? The North is more complicated. All right? So, but you got to pay attention to these three groups. What are the three groups? Matthew?
Yeah.
What are the three groups? Look. Abolitionists,
No
moderate,
expansion.
no expansion moderates,
Don't
and
care.
Don't care.
don't care. You could put that on your paper if you want.
Yeah.
Maybe help you
I
stay
got it
awake.
right here.
You want some coffee?
Abolitionists?
Some
No,
cold,
I'm-
some cold coffee. All right. So, you got this? You have this paradigm. So, my argument is, we get this Civil War when more and more of the don't cares go to non-expansion, and more of the non-expansions go to abolitionists. You're getting a direct movement to the different poles. With each,
Non-expansion one more time.
you're going to get the don't cares and the non-expansion to get over here to we're not compromising anymore. By 1860, it's no compromise. And they are no compromise. Look at this. This is a really big deal. When you get in the North, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, in the election of 1860, executive branch, the House and Senate, and on its way will be the judicial branch, will be dominated by the Republicans, just like today. The Southerners say, we're leaving. The Southerners are going to say, look, they hate us. That Lincoln is an abolitionist. They're going to take our slaves. They're going to abuse our rights. We have no power in the Union. We're leaving now while we still have economic, political strength. So that's why they leave in 1860, and beginning in 1860. After the election of Lincoln. Lincoln's election is the tipping point for the South. Lincoln was not even on the ballot in the South. He was in all these states. His name was not on the ballot. So from the Southern perspective, look at what they're saying. The North is dominant. They dominate the House, they dominate the Senate, and they're going to dominate the judicial branch. They're going to amend the Constitution to outlaw slavery. It's just a matter of time. The election of Lincoln does it. Lincoln, in Georgia, his name wasn't even on the ballot. You wanted to vote for Lincoln, you couldn't because his name wasn't even on there. Okay? They were done. And when he wins without even being voted for in the South, they say for sure, look, our way of life is over. They're going to end slavery. Let's leave now while we're strong. You get it? And we call this, now this is kind of hard to see now, but the polarization of the two sections. Do you understand? And what is it? What do they stop doing? They stop compromising because of the election of 1860. Boom. The South says, no, we're done. That's how you can organize all this information. And so what you need to have that paradigm a little bit, but also when you look at all of these details, Uncle Tom's Cabin, what is the South going to say about it? They hate us. That's what they think. It's an exaggerated kind of propaganda book saying that the Southerners are horrible in the way they treat their slaves. And the Southerners are saying, well, I do not treat our servants like that. How dare they say that, you know? They hate us. Those Northern Yankees, they hate us down here, you know. They're going to be attacked.
You're really good at that.
Wow.
Practice.
Dred Scott decision says slavery is legal in every state because slaves are property and they can't stop you from taking your property wherever you want without a court. What does that do to the abolitionists? They go nuts. What does it do to the anti-expansion people? They go nuts. They go more radical. What does it do to the don't cares? They don't care. They don't care. So that's the way you have to see all of these details. Kansas-Nebraska Act overturns the Missouri Compromise. It opens up more territory to slavery. What does that do to the abolitionists? Extreme anger. Non-expansion people. More extreme hostility. Lincoln is here. Etc. And so what you're going to see is, step by step, it gets more and more radical until it erupts in 1861. The South leaves the Union, and Lincoln sends an army to say, no, you can't leave. That's going to be the war. So you got to understand how all this stuff fits in. And it's a really easy way if you think about it in that paradigm that I'm suggesting. What do you think, Daniel? Does that help you understand it? Did you draw a picture of it? You're an artist, aren't you? I really want you to draw a picture of it. I'm not kidding. Everybody should draw a picture of all of that.
In the war, at the beginning of, or like towards the beginning of the 1850s, were the moderates the majority, or who
Yeah.
they were?
Yeah, for sure. Abolitionists were a small population. The don't cares are moderates, and the non-expansion people are moderates. So these are the moderates. What we'll see is the radicals start to expand. Now they're not abolitionists, but they are, hey, you can't do this. When the South leaves, the North basically says, no, they can't leave, and they support the war effort. There's still a small population of abolitionists. When the war starts, it's not about abolition. It's about maintaining the Union. But is it about slavery still? Yeah, because that's the motivating force behind the Southerners, and the motivating force behind the political fight is about slavery. The Southern people in the South always say, well, no, it's about states' rights, not about slavery. Well, you want your right to own slaves perpetually. That's about slavery. So is there any way to separate the Civil War and states' rights from slavery? You can't separate it. technically, they will say, no, it's not about slavery, it's states' rights. It is true, it is states' rights.